Good morning, friends. Literary terms have become a prominent topic in the modern era in the competitive exams, and especially it is a key topic in literature. So, sonnet is not a figure of speech. Certainly, it is neither a sound device nor a sense device because figures of speech can be categorized into two categories. Number one, sense devices. Number two, sound devices. But it is not a figure of speech, it is a literary term. So, we are to study a number of literary terms that are very important in all sorts of competitive examinations, and here in that particular series we are going to learn sonnet and its types today here in class. So, sonnet. What is a sonnet? Look here. Firstly, you have to look at the spelling of sonnet. Okay, Sonnet. This word has been derived from the Italian lexical item, or what we call Italian word sonetto. Sonetto. Okay. So sonetto in Latin language is the origin of sonnet that we study these days, and in fact we have been studying this word sonnet since 16th century, that is known as Renaissance age, or especially what we call here Elizabethan age, precisely speaking. So this is the origin word. Now look, how many types of sonnets? What is a sonnet and who is the father of sonnet? Okay, so it is an Italian word, sonetto, and this sonnet has come from that particular sonetto. Now look, who is the father of sonetto, or what we call these days sonnet? Francisco Petrarchan. Francisco Petrarchan in the 14th century was the main or key person who started the term sonetto, and in fact later on it became sonnet in the 16th century. So who is the father of sonnet? So you may say Francisco Petrarchan is supposed to be the father of sonnet. Now look here, you may take a screenshot if you want. Yes. Now look, how many types of sonnets and what is the definition of sonnet? Look here. So, Petrarchan, Francisco Petrarchan in 14th century. And now look, what is the definition? A sonnet is a 14-line lyric poem on single issue or single subject. Okay. So it does not deal, a sonnet does not deal a number of issues. Okay. It is a 14-line short lyric poem that deals the single issue, and in fact the lines are always in iambic pentameter. I already explicited what is an iambic line or iambic meter. when an unstressed syllable is followed by a stressed syllable, this sequence is called iambic. Okay, so in sonnet there are iambic pentameter lines. Penta means 5. Okay, so there are 5 meters in a single line, and we are having 14 lines of such types. So 14 lines are there, and each and every line of these 14 lines is in iambic pentameter. Pentameter means 5. Okay, what is the meaning of penta? Penta means 5. 5 meters, and 1 meter consists of 2 syllables. So there are certainly 10 syllables in every line. So you may write down here this may be the definition, definition. Look here, definition, definition, and it is not definition, na. There is no na, there is ni in definition. Okay, a 14 line. So whenever a hyphen comes, we never use a plural word here. We can't say lines after hyphen. 14 line, it makes a certain amount, certain number. So 14 line, short, lyric, poem. Okay, lyric that can be sung. Every poem cannot be sung. Odes can be sung, ballads can be sung, and sonnets can be sung. So it is a poem that can be sung. Okay, now look here. So definitely it is a lyric poem. It is a short poem. For a 14 line short lyric poem, and in fact the lines are, so you may say, which does have iambic pentameter lines. This is very important point here. A 14 line, number 1 point, 14 line, number 2, lyric poem, which does have iambic pentameter lines. An additional rider in information you may add here, a sonnet is on the single issue or subject. That is the main feature. A sonnet deals a single issue, a single subject, a single problem. Okay, so 2 problems or more than 2 problems cannot be dealt in a sonnet. A sonnet may be only on one issue, single issue. So single issue is the main feature. Number 1, 14 lines, you may say here. A sonnet must have 14 lines. Number 2, it must be a lyric poem. Number 3, there must be iambic pentameter lines. And number 4 is single issue, deals in single issue. So these 4 features just settled the definition of a sonnet. Now the question arises, how many types of sonnets there, and what is the history of those type sonnets? Now let us see at the screen. You may just take this screenshot again. This is the only possible definition for sonnet. Now look, how many types of sonnets? So sonnets are basically of 2 types. Number 1, Petrarchan. Petrarchan. Who was the father of sonnet? Petrarchan sonnets. And number 2, English sonnets. The other name of Petrarchan sonnet is Italian sonnet. Petrarchan sonnets are called Italian sonnets. And we may have another name for English sonnets, and that is Shakespearean sonnet. We may have the third name again for English sonnet. So English sonnets may be called Shakespearean sonnet, or we may call the Elizabethan sonnet. So there are 3 names for English sonnets. We may call English sonnets, or Shakespearean sonnets, or Elizabethan sonnets. Likewise, here Petrarchan sonnets do have the other name, Italian sonnets. So Petrarchan sonnets may be called Italian sonnets. Now the question arises, who used the Petrarchan sonnet first time? I already just taught here that the father of Petrarchan sonnet, or even the father of sonnet, is Francisco Petrarchan. But he was in 14th century, and in the later coming century, in the 16th century, formally both English sonnets and Petrarchan sonnets were introduced by the different scholars. So in 16th century, what we find here, the Earl of Surrey, okay, who was the Earl of Surrey? Henry Howard. Henry Howard was the Earl of Surrey, and he introduced the English sonnets, or Shakespearean sonnets, or what we call Elizabethan sonnets. And in the 16th century, it was Thomas Watt who introduced the Italian sonnet. So Italian sonnet was firstly introduced, you may write down here, firstly introduced by Thomas Watt. Look at the spelling. We can't pronounce Thomas. The correct pronunciation of the word is Thomas and not Thomas. Watt, W-Y-A-T-T. So Thomas Watt was the first person who introduced the sonnet, Petrarchan sonnet, firstly in the 16th century, after Petrarchan, Francisco Petrarchan, who just invented Petrarchan sonnets the first time in the 14th century, but now we are talking in the 16th century, and in the 16th century, it is Thomas Watt who firstly introduces Italian sonnet and its formation, 16th century. In 16th century, it was Thomas Watt who introduced Petrarchan sonnet and the arrangement of the lines in the Petrarchan sonnet, and precisely speaking, the rhyme is king of the Petrarchan sonnet. Now let us see who introduced the Shakespearean sonnet. Okay, so the Shakespearean sonnet again in the 16th century was introduced first time by Henry Howard. So you may write down here, firstly introduced, I am talking about the Elizabethan. sonnets or English sonnets or Shakespearean sonnet. Firstly introduced by Henry Howard. So the name of Henry Howard in the 16th century is much related with English sonnets, and Thomas Watt in the same 16th century is related with the Petrarchan sonnet. Whereas we already seen that Francisco Petrarchan 2 centuries earlier in 14th century he put the founding stone for the sonnets, and after 2 centuries in 16th centuries there became the two varieties of the sonnets. The founding stone of the Petrarchan sonnet was put by Thomas Watt, whereas the founding stone of the English sonnets or the Shakespearean sonnets or the Elizabethan sonnets was put by Henry Howard. So this is the brief introduction about the types of the sonnets. So you have already known what is sonnet, what is the definition of sonnet, and how many types of sonnets. A little later, I would talk about the third variety of sonnet, and that is curtal sonnet. That the founding stone of the curtal sonnet was put in the Victorian era by Gerard Manley Hopkins. When we go through his sonnets like Pied Beauty or we go through Peace, so we see there are only 10.5 lines in every sonnet. Now the question becomes very difficult in competitive examinations, especially at higher level examination. People say, what is a sonnet? The options may be there. Number one, a sonnet is a short lyric poem. Yes, of course it is right. Option number B, a sonnet is a 14-line poem. Of course it is right. Number C, a sonnet deals with a single issue. Yes, of course it is right. Each line of a sonnet deals in iambic pentameter. That is right. But now the question is not this. Question is this. Which is the mandatory condition for being a sonnet? So mostly people always say a 14-line. For example, the options are in different manner. Listen once again. What is a sonnet? Number one option, a 14-line poem. Number B, iambic pentameter line. Number C, a 12-line poem. Number D, trochaic meter. So you will be in a hurry, and I think most of the students are always in a hurry and they would tick mark 14-line short lyric poem. But it is not a mandatory condition for being a sonnet. The mandatory condition is, because we already seen in curtal sonnet there are only 11 lines, precisely speaking 10.5 lines. So curtal sonnet does have 10.5 lines. On the contrary, most of the sonnets do have 14 lines. So it is not a mandatory condition that there are always 14 lines in a sonnet. But one thing is very indispensable, and that becomes the essential quality for being a sonnet, and that is option number 2. Each and every line in any kind of sonnet, whether it is Italian sonnet, whether it is English sonnet, or whether it is curtal sonnet, the lines, each and every line of a sonnet must be iambic pentameter lines. So 14-line short lyric poem cannot be treated as the right answer, but the right answer would be iambic pentameter lines. Okay? So what is the indispensable quality for being a sonnet? So you may say each and every line of a sonnet is always in iambic pentameter. That is the right answer here. So we have to look at the details of the terms here so that you may not have any Sisyphean knot in coming examination, because in 12th class even you may have so many MCQs, and in fact grammar is not directly asked in 12th class, but in fact grammar affects the answers to a great extent, and therefore in further examinations even grammar is asked in abundance and in details. Therefore the points must be clear into your minds. There should not be any haziness in your mind, there should not be any confusion, and you must not have any type of confusion basically I am speaking about. So the picture must be crystal clear all about these literary terms that we are going to study here. We would study a number of literary terms here. So in that particular series we are studying sonnets here. So we already seen two types of sonnets are here, Italian sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet. Now look, what are the features of Italian sonnets and what are the features of English sonnets? Look here, they can be discriminated. These two types of sonnets may be discriminated on the basis of the arrangement of lines and on the basis of the rhyme scheme. Okay, so let us look at the screen. What are the main discriminating qualities between these two sonnets? That is going to be studied here very shortly. Now you may just take. So now see what is a Petrarchan sonnet and what is an English sonnet. First of all, we must see the arrangement of the sonnets. Look here, this is Petrarchan sonnet and this is English sonnet. Look, in Petrarchan sonnet there must be 14 lines, and in English sonnet there must be 14 lines. Okay, it must deal with a single issue, it must deal with a single issue also. Okay, now look here, what will be the arrangement of the words, arrangement of the lines? So 14 lines, the arrangement of 14 lines would be in the following manner: 8 plus 6. This 8 line set is called octave, and this 6 line set is called sestet. So sestet means a group of 6 lines, and octave means a group of 8 lines. For example, a Petrarchan sonnet may be in such way: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is a set of 8 lines. It is called an octave. Now there will be another set: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. This set of 6 line is called a sestet. Sestet means a stanza of 6 lines. So in Petrarchan line, octave always puts a problem. There is always a description of a problem in the octave, and there is a solution in this sestet. This is the pattern of these two stanzas. In octave, the poet discusses a single problem, and in sestet, in this part, there is a solution of that particular part. Literally speaking, these, if we just do the sum total of these two parts, they become the 14 lines. 8 plus 6 is equal to 14 lines. On the contrary, in Shakespearean sonnet, we are having the set of 4 lines, 3 sets, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one set of 4 lines is called a quatrain. We may have another quatrain of 4 lines. So you may say 5, 6, 7, 8. This is quatrain number 1, and this is quatrain number 2, and there may be the third one as well. So we may have 9, 10, 11, and 12. So this is quatrain number 3 in Shakespearean sonnet, and there is certainly a concluding couplet. Line number 13 and 14, that is a concluding couplet. So if we find the arrangement of the 14 lines in a sonnet in such a way that we know 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 2 is equal to 14. So certainly this arrangement always talks of English sonnet or the Shakespearean sonnet, or we may call the Elizabethan sonnet. In Shakespearean sonnet, we may have 3 quatrains. One quatrain consists of 4 lines. So in fact, there are 3 quatrains and a concluding couplet. And whereas we may see in Petrarchan sonnets, we may have only 2 sets, one octave that consists of 8 lines, and the other is sestet that consists of 6 lines. So when we do sum total of 8 and 6, that makes 14. So Petrarchan sonnet consists of 14 lines, and English sonnet also consists of 14 lines. So this is the arrangement of lines, and this is the basic discrimination between Italian sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet. Now let us see what is the basic rhyme scheme of these two sonnets. What rhyme schemes follow these two types of sonnets? Let us see here. So in Shakespearean sonnet, firstly we talk about Shakespearean sonnet. So the rhyme scheme may be here AB, AB. This is the first quatrain that we see here. Now CD, CD. Now EF, EF, and now G, G. So this is the rhyme scheme. So we may just add here rhyme scheme. A, we may put here at the end, because rhyme scheme is always written down at the right end of the line. So A, B, A, B. This is the rhyme scheme of first quatrain in English sonnet. Then C, D, C, D. This is the rhyme scheme of the second quatrain. Then E, F. and EF, then G and G for the concluding couplet. So AB, 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 CD, CD, EF, EF, and GG. This will be a pattern of the rhyme scheme in the case of English sonnet or Shakespearean sonnet. So what will be the rhyme scheme in a Shakespearean sonnet? AB, AB, then CD, CD, then EF, EF, then GG. But later on, Spenser, in fact, we already seen a number of sonnets by Edmund Spenser in the Elizabethan age. Spenser was a key poet in the Elizabethan age. He was the contemporary of Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, Christopher Marlowe, etc. And in fact, we find that Spenserian sonnets do have an origin of Shakespearean sonnet. I mean to say that Spenserian sonnets have been derived not from Italian sonnets but from English sonnets. But in fact, Spenser wrote so many sonnets with a different rhyme scheme. He didn't follow this rhyme scheme that becomes the basic rhyme scheme of the English sonnets. In fact, Spenser did some change in the rhyme scheme. So we may see what is the rhyme scheme of a Spenserian sonnet, that is basically a variety of English sonnet and not a variety of Italian sonnet. So AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG, this is the basic rhyme scheme of English sonnet, but Spenser did some changes in this rhyme scheme, and that may be AB, AB. You may write down here Spenserian. Spenser's rhyme scheme. In his sonnets. What will be the rhyme scheme? So we may have here AB, AB, BC, BC, then CD, CD, then EE. So this is the first quatrain, this is the second quatrain, this is the third quatrain, and this is the concluding couplet. So we are seeing that even in Spenser's sonnet, there are 3 quatrains. Each quatrain consists of 4 lines, and there is a concluding couplet here. But the rhyme scheme differs from the English sonnet. In English sonnet, the rhyme scheme was AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, and GG. But rhyme scheme in the case of Spenser sonnet is AB, AB, BC, BC, CD, CD, then EE. There is a slight change in the rhyme scheme here. Okay, so this is a very important point. You may put it in box and you may again put it in box. In Shakespearean sonnet, the rhyme scheme is AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. And in Spenserian sonnet, that is a type of English sonnet, is AB, AB, BC, BC, CD, CD, EE. So this is all about English sonnet, or what we call Shakespearean sonnet, or what we call Elizabethan sonnets. It does have 3 names. Now look, what is the rhyme scheme in the case of a Petrarchan sonnet, or what we call an Italian sonnet? So Petrarchan sonnets or Italian sonnets are the same thing. So there are always 2 stanzas in a Petrarchan sonnet, 1 octave of 8 lines, and the following sestet that consists of 6 lines. In octave, the poet deals a single issue, and in sestet, the poet gives the solution of that particular problem or issue or subject. Okay, so this is the basic discriminating feature between these two types of sonnets that we call Petrarchan sonnet and English sonnet. So what is the rhyme scheme here in Petrarchan sonnet? So this is the rhyme scheme. You may say here, let me write down here, A, B, B, A. What is the rhyme scheme here? A, B, B, A. So there is a great difference here, and again we may say A, B, B, A. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A, B, B, A, B, B, A. आप इसको ऐसे याद कर सकते हैं, A, B, B, A, अब्बा अब्बा. Okay, that is Petrarchan, and Shakespearean may be dealt in the different way. Okay, so we may say A, sets F, G, G. So A, B, B, A, this will be the rhyme scheme of an octave. And what will be the rhyme scheme of a sestet? That is the question here. So the rhyme scheme of a sestet will be, in the case of Petrarchan sonnet, C, D, E, C, D, E. So Abba, Abba, C, D, E, C, D, E. This will be the rhyme scheme pattern in the case of Petrarchan sonnet or in the case of Italian sonnet. So the rhyme scheme of octave will be A, B, B, A. Let me write down here at the end of the lines. A, B, B, A. Then again A, B, then B, A. And what will be the rhyme scheme in the sestet? C, D, E, then again repetition of C, D, E. So this will be the rhyme scheme of an octave, and this will be the rhyme scheme of the sestet. In octave, A, B, B, A, B, B, A, and in sestet, C, D, E, C, D, E. So that makes 14 lines again. So this is the rhyme scheme of Petrarchan sonnet, and this is the arrangement in Petrarchan sonnet. So we already seen that all the sonnets, both of the sonnets, both English sonnets and Petrarchan sonnets, they do have 14 lines. Both of the sonnets deal in a single issue, single problem, single subject, and in fact both of the sonnets do have 14 lines. Both of the sonnets are lyrical poems, and in fact both of the sonnets do have different types of arrangement. In Petrarchan sonnet, we are having 8 plus 6, 1 octave and 1 sestet, that makes 14 lines. And in English sonnet, we do have 3 quatrains. Each quatrain consists of 4 lines. 4 3s are 12 lines, and a concluding couplet that makes 14 in totality in English sonnets. And there is a great difference between the rhyme scheme in English sonnets and in Petrarchan sonnets. Now look here, another important information here. Who are the great poets who followed what kind of particular sonnet, who followed and who composed the sonnets on the pattern of English sonnets, and who were the great poets in English literature who just jotted down their own sonnets on the pattern of English sonnets and on the pattern of Italian sonnets. Yes, we may write down here some of the names. So in we may say rhyme scheme is here. So Spencer followed 3 quatrains and 1 concluding. It means English sonnet. So you may write down here at the top, English sonnets followed by number 1, Spencer. Edmund Spencer followed a different rhyme scheme from English sonnets, but his origin was English sonnet. So Spenser made his own sonnet from English sonnets and not from Italian sonnet. So in English sonnet, the followers of English sonnet is Spenser, and number 2 key poet is John Donne. John Donne also followed English sonnets. And number 3, we may say Dylan Thomas, whose poem Fern Hill we study in BA third year syllabus in University of Kota. And we may have the another here. So we may have a number of poets here. One important poet that I am recalling here who follows Shakespearean style, and that is in the Victorian age, W.H. Auden, who wrote in memory of W.B. Yeats an elegy on the death of W.B. Yeats. Auden. So Auden composed sonnets. W.H. Auden. So Auden composed on the pattern of English sonnets. Dylan Thomas composed sonnets on the pattern of English sonnets. John Donne on the pattern of English sonnets. And Edmund Spenser on the pattern of English sonnets. Now we can talk about Petrarchan sonnet, who composed their sonnets on the pattern of Petrarchan. So you may take one important name here, Milton. Milton's sonnets have been derived from Petrarchan sonnet. Okay. Now the second important name is William Wordsworth. He derived his own sonnets from Petrarchan sonnet. So Milton, Wordsworth, these were two great poets who derived, and the third important is Dante Gabriel Rossetti, who was the pre-Raphaelite poet. In fact, we are having two types of Dantes in English literature. Dante's Divine Comedy, we already seen. He was in medieval period, in a Middle English period, Allegory Dante. But I am not talking here about Allegory Dante. I am talking about Dante Gabriel Rossetti, who is a poet in pre-Raphaelite era. That is a part of the Victorian era. Okay. So pre-Raphaelites were basically painters who became the poet there in the Victorian era. Pre-Raphaelites poets are very important in English literature, and in fact Dante Gabriel, okay, DG Allegory, I'm talking about Rossetti here. So Dante Gabriel Rossetti wrote so many sonnets here on the pattern of Petrarchan sonnets. So on the pattern of Petrarchan sonnets, we are having three important poets, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and number 2 we may have Wordsworth, and number 3 we may have Milton. And on the pattern of Shakespearean sonnet, we already seen 4 great poets there. Dylan Thomas we already seen there Auden on the pattern of English sonnets, and we already seen there Edmund Spenser, and we already seen there the another great poet John Donne. These all followed English sonnets, the pattern of English sonnets, and whereas these two great poets, Milton, Wordsworth, and Rossetti, these 3 poets followed the Petrarchan pattern there in their sonnets. So this is the brief introduction about the sonnets here. And now let us see what is a curtal sonnet. Let me wipe out. You may take the screenshot. So you may have the rhyme scheme here for both of the sonnets. You may have the arrangement of the lines in both of the sonnets, and you may have the great poets, the great coming poets after 16th century who followed the different sonnets and the pattern of different sonnets there. So you will get each and every information in this screenshot. So you may take a screenshot here. Okay, thanks. Now let me wipe out the screen here, and now let us see what is a curtal sonnet. So indispensable quality of a sonnet is not that it does have 14 lines, but the indispensable quality, the mandatory and the essential quality of being a sonnet that designs and defines a sonnet, that is iambic pentameter lines. It means whatever the sonnet is there, but each and every line of every sonnet would be in iambic pentameter pattern there. So there would be 5 iambs meter. Now let us say what is a curtal sonnet and who introduced curtal sonnet. In fact, what is a curtal sonnet? The term curtal sonnet was firstly introduced by Gerard Manley Hopkins in the Victorian era. Hopkins is considered the key poet in the Victorian era, and we already seen so many great poems: The Sea and the Skylark, The Pied Beauty, The Peace. They are great poems here. Okay, great lyrical poems in the form of sonnets. So curtal sonnet does have not 14 lines, but 11 lines. Precisely speaking, a curtal sonnet does have 10 and a half lines. You may write down. So curtal sonnet was introduced by Gerard Manley Hopkins. In which era? You may write down in the Victorian era. In the Victorian era, it was Gerard Manley Hopkins who firstly introduced the term curtal sonnet. Okay, that did have 11 lines in a sonnet. Precisely speaking, not 11 lines exactly. Exactly, there were 10 and a half lines. Hopkins does have basically his own rhythm style, and that is called sprung rhythm. So this last line that we are calling here half line, in fact it is a shorter than the sprung rhythm of Hopkins. Hopkins rhythm is called sprung rhythm, and this the last line, the 11th line, is a half line. It is always a shorter rhythm than is a regular sprung rhythm of the Victorian poet, what we call Gerard Manley Hopkins. So the basic features are the same. Sonnet does have, it is a short lyric poem. It deals with a single issue, and in fact there are iambic pentameter lines. The lines are always iambic pentameter. So we already seen that the common feature in all the three types of sonnets, whether it is a Petrarchan sonnet or it is an English sonnet or even it is a curtal sonnet, in each and every kind of sonnets, in all the three types of sonnet, we do have the pattern of lines in the form of iambic pentameter. So to be 14 lines in a sonnet is not a mandatory quality, but to be a line in iambic pentameter is the mandatory condition for every kind of sonnet, for all types of sonnets. So if the question is asked in examination, you have to put iambic pentameter lines, not 14 lines. So it is not necessary that in each and every type of sonnet there might be 14 lines. In curtal sonnet, we do have only 11 lines. Precisely speaking, 10 and a half lines. But even in curtal sonnets, we do have petrarchal lines there. Iambic pentameter lines. And even in Italian sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet, we do have iambic pentameter lines, and in curtal sonnet we do have iambic pentameter lines. So to be iambic pentameter lines is the indispensable feature for every sonnet. This is a very important point. That's why I have just put an emphasis on this point 2 or 3 times here. Okay. So iambic pentameter lines in curtal sonnet, number of lines 10 and a half, or what we may say 11 lines, and they are not 14 lines, and it deals in a single issue. What are the examples of curtal sonnets? Okay, the examples of English sonnets, we already seen the sonnets by all that particular series of the poets that I just mentioned here in the previous screenshot there. Okay, and Spencer's sonnets, Spencerian sonnets, or English sonnets, we may have John Donne, all these things there. Okay, and in Petrarchan sonnets, we already seen so many great poets there like Milton. So Miltonic sonnets are the examples of Petrarchan sonnets, and Spencerian sonnets are the examples of Shakespearean sonnets. But now the question arises, name some sonnets that are curtal sonnets. And here that is the point that the students always miss. So you may know 2 or 3 popularly known sonnets by G.M. Hopkins. So you may write down here sonnet, the name of the sonnet, that is curtal sonnet, that is having 10 and a half lines. So you may write down Pied Beauty is the sonnet there that we study in MA previous. Okay, and the other sonnet is Peace, and the third sonnet is Ash Buffs. All these 3 curtal sonnets are here by Gerard Manley Hopkins. So you may write down here examples of curtal sonnets. Examples of the curtal sonnets. Number 1, Pied Beauty. Number 2, Peace. Number 3, Ash Buffs. These all 3 sonnets are by Hopkins. G.M. Hopkins. So G.M. Hopkins gave the term curtal sonnet, and he cast and couched these 3 important curtal sonnets. Number 1, Pied Beauty. Number 2 curtal sonnet is Peace, and number 3, Ash Buffs. Okay, so these 3 sonnets by Hopkins are the examples of the curtal sonnets. So in today's class, we already seen what is a sonnet and what is the origin of a sonnet. The term sonnet has been derived from the Italian word sonetto. There are 2 types of sonnets. Number 1, English sonnets. Number 2, Petrarchan sonnets. Petrarchan sonnets does have 40 lines, and in fact the arrangement of these 40 lines in the form of an octave and in the form of sestet. Octave means 8 lines, and sestet consists of 6 lines. In totality, there are 4 lines in a Petrarchan sonnet, and in the case of English sonnets, we do have 14 lines again in the form of 3 quatrains. Each quatrain consists of 4 lines and there is a concluding couplet there. So 4 3s are 12 and a concluding couplet that makes 14 lines in totality in the case of English sonnet, or what we call Shakespearean sonnet, or the Elizabethan sonnets. We already seen the different rhyme schemes in the case of Petrarchan sonnet and in the case of English sonnets. And in fact, we already seen the great poets who followed the pattern of Petrarchan sonnet and who followed the pattern of English sonnets. And at the end, we saw what is a curtal sonnet and who gave the term curtal sonnet. It was Gerard Manley Hopkins in the Victorian age who gave the term curtal sonnet. And in fact, we already seen the important examples of curtal sonnets that may be asked in every sort of competitive examinations, and even the question is not asked, you are as free as bird to just return your information in the college examinations, because they are always subjective papers, and in subjective papers a student is always free to reflect his own knowledge there. So you may mention on behalf of yourselves there in examination. So the examples of curtal sonnets are from Gerard Manley Hopkins. The first sonnet and the name is Pied Beauty. The second curtal sonnet is Peace, and the third is Ash Buffs. These three curtal sonnets are from Hopkins in the Victorian age. So hopefully you enjoyed my lecture here on the literary term sonnet, and in the coming classes we are going to discuss some more literary terms like odes. What is ode? What is epic? What is ballad? What is a dramatic monologue? What is lyric? What is comedy? What is tragedy? What is catharsis? So we are going to have a, a brief introduction in the coming classes there about these all terms there. So these literary terms are not called figure of speech, as I mentioned this thing in the beginning of my today's lecture, because figures of speech are different and literary terms are different. So hopefully you enjoyed this lecture, and it's time to have a request. You please subscribe my channel, and you please like and do share my channel here, so that you may just get notification and information about my coming lectures here. So one request on behalf of myself here, you please subscribe my channel and do like and do share and do ring the bell there. Hopefully you enjoy my classes, and that's enough for today, and we can meet in the next class. Till then, thanks, have a nice time, see you.